time to educate a man on the fine points of what a woman of the 19th century could achieve. "Does my gender matter?" she asked. He took a moment to scan her clothing and face, then shrugged. "Not to me." Catherine was glad. "Are you ready?" He nodded yes. "Then let's go rob us a safe." Catherine and her accomplice rapidly covered the short distance to the main building. The safe she'd alluded to belonged to Mr. Rupert Samuels, a wealthy Chicago businessman and a pillar of the city's black community. He had many storehouses on this large plot of land on the far edge of the city, but only one held his business office. When they reached the door, her companion whispered, "They said you had a way in?" It was her turn to nod yes, as she reached into her trouser pocket and withdrew a small, thin box. Inside were a set of lockpicks given to her for her 25th birthday by a wily old gentleman burglar she'd met during her stint as a newspaper woman back in Virginia. Catherine inserted one of the gap-toothed picks into the door's padlock, and it opened. She sensed the surprise emanating from the man at her side, but she didn't pause to acknowledge it. Men were surprised by her unconventional ways all the time. They tiptoed inside cautiously. Catherine was fairly certain no one would be about, but she knew better than to take that for granted. The solid silence made her breathing sound like a train engine, and her heart beat as loud as a drum. She reached back and softly closed the door. "The safe's hidden behind that banister painting on the far wall," she told her accomplice quietly. The man replied, "I'll need a bit of light." She heard the scratch of a match and then saw the lit wick of a candle stub. He cupped his hand around the dancing finger of flame to prevent the light from casting too well. He looked around, spied the copy of the prize-winning banister painting under the oaks, and told Catherine, "Keep watch." Catherine slid back into the darkness by the door. She was glad for his help because she couldn't have gotten into the safe alone. Thanks to her old burglar friend, she could easily spring the locks on doors and some strong boxes, but her abilities did not extend to wall safes. It had taken her editor, Jeff Pratt, weeks to find a man who could be trusted to discreetly carry out this endeavor. The long search had cut so deeply into the time frame she and Jeff had allotted for this investigation that if tonight's burglary proved unsuccessful, her 6 long months of hard work would go for naught. Her companion called out softly, "It's open, and we've struck gold." The announcement filled Catherine with excitement, but she kept her wits about her. She opened the door a crack to make certain no one was approaching from outside before going over to see what the safe held. The candle provided just enough light to illuminate the area around Samuels's large oak desk. The inside of the safe was filled with shadows, but they weren't thick enough to hide the 3 printer's plates stacked against the back wall. With a satisfied smile, Catherine reached inside and lifted them out. Rupert Samuels had printed hundreds, maybe thousands of counterfeit railroad stock certificates using the plates Catherine now passed over to her companion. At first glance, the Samuels scheme appeared to be very beneficial. How better to circumvent the Jim Crow laws than to have a rail line that would cater only to members of the race? The hoodwinked investors, mostly pensioners and widows, had willingly let themselves be led to the slaughter by the well-dressed and seemingly sincere young men selling the stocks. After the bank drafts of the victims cleared, the salesmen vanished, and the investors were left holding worthless pieces of paper. Catherine reached back inside the safe and pulled out a stack of fraudulent stock certificates and a large ledger. She held the ledger toward the light and hastily scanned the entries. There were pages and pages of names, each one adjacent to addresses and dollar amounts. She came across the name of Sally Dotson, an old friend of her Aunt Seal's and Catherine's landlady, Sally, and many of the members of her church had been fleeced by the stock sharps. When Sally told Catherine what had happened, Catherine wrote to her editor, Jeff